You are already sort of a cybernetic symbiote. Neural nets are taking over from regular programming. So you are connected.
I'm for the robots.
Yeah, so a lot of Elon Musk news to catch up on. First off, I saw him tweet this morning, which I thought was interesting and sort of indicative of where we are in society. Elon Musk tweets out, Ukraine-Russia peace. He's got a few points here. One, redo elections of annexed regions under UN supervision. Russia leaves if that is the will of the people. The second one here, Crimea formally part of Russia, as it has been since 1783 until Khrushchev's mistake. Third one, water supply to Crimea assured. Fourth one, Ukraine remains neutral. Yes or no? Now, this is a poll, obviously. It has, as of this recording, over 1.6 million votes, which is a lot of votes. If we're talking about like an election or something, we're talking... I don't know. Actually, I don't know the numbers of the votes that come in on an election, but certainly if you're talking about real-time data of people's opinions on something like this, it's quick. It's 1.7 million in a few hours is quite the data gathering taking place here. And my only point with showing you this is that we're at a place now where governance and how things operate in the world is shifting. It's changing. It has been for a long time, but now I think more than ever, we're seeing how technocrats like Elon Musk can simply run a poll on Twitter, and it can not only gauge the temperament of the world and what they're thinking about certain world events, but also maybe in the future affect change where, you know, if Elon gets enough support on some movement or something, some activity or action, the governments almost become obsolete. You know, they can't do anything about it. If everyone in the world is mobilizing for one particular view on things, that's it's hard to fight against that unless you have an army of bots, which is what I don't know what he might be up against here. Now, I haven't voted on this particular account. I'm going to go ahead. So basically, the idea is to sort of redo things. And that's part of why this caught my attention. Redo elections of annexed region under UN supervision, as if since Elon declared it, we will just go ahead and do that. You know, I know he's maybe throwing it out there as a hypothetical, but just the level of pride and I don't know, just the level of knowing you have an influence, you know, that it would take to go ahead and roll that out there, roll out this thought about, it's not necessarily pro-Russia. It's just more like hey, let's just redo it. Let's redo the whole thing under UN supervision. So the UN has a better watch on the whole situation. Yes or no? I believe the last I looked, the no's were dominating. But let me check here. I'm just going to go ahead and compromise this account and hit yes. And as of now, the no's are still winning. Almost 63% say no and 37% say yes. But who knows how many of those 1.6 million votes is actually a human being and not just a robot. And that is the question. If the robots are already voting, what are we to do? And speaking of robots, we, over the weekend, had the big AI event, the Tesla AI event. And I have some clips from it. This first one, it's just a 15-second clip. There's not much to hear. It's more about what's going on screen here. There was a big countdown. And this is Elon and his team. It's his entry. And basically, there is a robot hand that is doing almost like a futuristic Flippy, maybe Flippy from 2070 or something. Really sleek looking robot hand. And it's doing a countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'll just play it here so you can kind of see it for those of you watching. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. No, it goes to the devil horns and it starts pumping, you know, like it's some kind of rock show. And then Elon comes out in his leather jacket and everyone cheers. Just kind of an interesting intro there. But, you know, that's just one thing to point out. Of course, the robot hands turns into a heart, and the big reveal of the robot, which let's see, what was the name of the robot? I think I had an Ars Technica article here, just real briefly to get an idea. Tesla shows off unfinished humanoid robot prototype at AI Day 2022. Today at Tesla's AI Day event, Tesla CEO Elon Musk unveiled an early prototype of its Optimus humanoid robot, which emerged from behind a curtain, walked around, waved, and raised the roof with his hands to the beat of techno music. That is exactly what happened. And I'll play a little bit here. You got the techno music, you got the screen opening. There he is, Optimus, the robot, looking pretty robot-y. He's looking at his hands. There's a big loop of a portal behind him, like a retro wave portal. And he slowly makes his way onto the stage, step by step, very carefully. And he looks very timid. There he is. He's glowing. He's shining. He's got some hard drives on his chest. His head is an anonymous dark mystique. And he's walking to the edge of the stage here, looking around, starts waving. Crowd is cheering. Starts waving some more, and I think he's cute, dude. Yeah, some dance moves. There it is. Raise the roof. It's over. The world is coming to an end. Yeah, that's something I don't think people realize. Robots dancing is really the way into the hearts of humanity.
That runs in your Tesla cars, by the way.
Yeah, the guy talks about how the sensors in here are the ones that is running your Tesla cars.
Literally the first time the robot has operated without a tether was on stage tonight.
So after all that, when Elon's saying, how this is the first time that the robot's moving without being tethered, it sort of walks towards the screen. He kind of wanders over to the screen and does the infinite walk as the portal loop video continues to go down the wormhole there. And so there you go. It's just a little imagery of what kind of sentiment they were sharing there. The robot emerging out of the portal, you as a human being going down the portal. It's all sort of taking place in real time. But I think the big takeaway from the event is the admission of something that we've been talking about for a long time, which is that all of this is about data collection. And we heard about data being the new oil, but it is, the analogy is very apparent now. And I have a clip here from Elon. He's asked about AGI, that's artificial general intelligence. And I have his response here. I did edit it down just a little bit just to, get through some of the parts where he's not talking or he's trying to compute next words. But here he just admits something that we've all known. And I think the idea of robots rolling out, if you think it's to help us, if you think it's just to make the world better, the society better, well, maybe. But in order to do that, you got to do something first.
Well, we're not actually specifically focused on AGI. I'm simply saying that AGI seems likely to be an emergent property of what we're doing. AGI
being artificial general intelligence.
Because we're creating all these autonomous cars and autonomous humanoids that are actually with a truly gigantic data stream that's coming in and being processed. It's by far the most amount of real-world data, and data you can't get by just searching the internet, because you have to be out there in the world and interacting with people and interacting with the roads and just, Earth is a big place, and reality is messy and complicated. So if you've got tens or hundreds of millions of autonomous vehicles and maybe even a comparable number of humanoids, maybe more than that on the humanoid front, well, that's just the most amount of data. The most amount of data. The cars will definitely get way better than human drivers, and the humanoid robots will become increasingly indistinguishable from humans, perhaps. And arguably, humans collectively are sort of a super intelligence as well, especially as we improve the data rate between humans. I mean, the thing that seemed to me way back in the early days of the internet was like humanity acquiring a nervous system, where now all of a sudden any one element of humanity could know all of the knowledge of humans by connecting to the internet. almost all the knowledge, or certainly a huge part of it. Whereas previously, we would exchange information by osmosis. We'd have to, like, in order to transfer data, so you would have to write a letter. Someone would have to carry the letter by person to another person, and then a whole bunch of things in between. And then it was like, yeah, I mean, it's insanely slow when you think about it.
Oh, slow. Yeah, it's slow. The old way is slow. We must move on to the new way. And that part right there in the middle where he talked about just all the data, or it's the collective data. What did he say?
Maybe even a comparable number of humanoids, maybe more than that on the humanoid front. Well, that's just the most amount of data. The most amount of data.
That's what it is. It's the most amount of data. How are we going to change the world unless we have clear, concise data about human activity, human interactions, the world itself? And there you go. You got to build that panopticon, the virtual panopticon, to gather the data. Then we can engineer society and the civilization to create a better world, right? But also, the concept that the dehumanization or looking at humanity as a species itself is very much hive mind. And we've talked about that for years concerning this idea that we're building a global brain, the noosphere that Teilhard de Chardin, a Jesuit, talked about in the 60s, 50s, 40s, maybe even earlier. And that's what they're building. Human beings to become nodes in the network. And that's partly what is taking place. But in order to do that, we can't just onboard ourselves into the nodes. We need machines to take all the data, and the kind of data that you can't find on the internet. As Elon said, we have to collect our own data. And so, very much exactly what we've been saying, and being proven true that we are living in this crazy time where, there was the early oil barons and the bankers, and they're sort of monopolizing oil to become these oil tycoons and everything else. Same thing is happening with data, but instead of just oil that fuels a certain part of our economy and our society, we're talking data, information about everything, which, as things roll out and unfold here, I continue to try to build my argument about the existence of God through information. Because information being gathered into some sort of intelligent or artificially intelligent system just proves that there is information that has built up our creation, our world, our universe, whatever you want to call it. The information was there to begin with. We are just simply capturing it and perhaps manipulating it. Well, who wrote the code? Unless it was maybe God, a transcendent mind that exists outside of space and time. All those arguments for the existence of God, but they don't want to go there. So they're just like, hey, we're going to make robots and make him dance, because that's what humans want. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of humans will fall for. One more quick clip here. Do we live in the most interesting time, Elon?
I was asked recently, what period of history would I prefer to be at the most? And my answer was right now. This is the most interesting time in history, and I read a lot of history. So let's do our best to keep that going. Yeah. Doesn't laugh like a villain or anything. Oh, man. All right, so there you go. There's a little bit of Elon Musk. One more thing to point out. Oh, sorry, I forgot that Basil's gone. He's sharing links with me. One more thing to point out about Elon, and thank you to Sir Sigurd the Beast, our executive producer for this episode, for highlighting this. There was a exchange between Jack Dorsey, formerly of Twitter, and Elon Musk from back in March 26th of 2022, this year, that leaked out. It came out, and I think it was one of these, some kind of, I don't know. Let's see. This document from Twitter versus Elon Musk. The court papers. Some of the court papers, I guess, came out, and this exchange was part of it between Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk. And it's Jack Dorsey basically sort of, talking about how things should look in the new sort of technocratic system. And Jack Dorsey here says, I believe it must be an open source protocol funded by a foundation of sorts that doesn't own the protocol.
only advances it, a bit like what Signal has done. It can't have an advertising model. Otherwise, you have surface area that governments and advertisers will try to influence and control. If it has a centralized entity behind it, it will be attacked. This isn't complicated work. It just has to be done right. So it's resilient to what has happened to Twitter. And he just goes on and talks about how, he wants to talk to Elon about it. It's really important. Back when we had the activists come in, I tried my hardest to get you on our board, and our board said no. That's about the time I decided I need to work to leave, as hard as it was for me. It was completely silly and backwards but I only had one vote and 3% of the company and no dual class shares. Hard setup. We can discuss more. And Elon just says, let's definitely discuss more. I think it's worth both trying to move Twitter in a better direction and doing something new that's decentralized. Yay. So all the buzzwords. You want open source. You want no government or no advertising. The advertising model is broken. That's really interesting. I have to say, as much as I know that we're sort of marching quickly into the technocratic world, there's a level of, at least even in the concept of the information economy. Canary Cry NewsTalk, among other shows, but our show, just because we're here. And all of you producers out there, all the listeners, everybody who shares the show is part of the community. You guys are ahead in terms of the model. I think they see that. Guys like Jack Dorsey clearly sees that the advertising model is a scam. It's broken, and they have to move away from it. And I find it interesting. Now, going back to the data barons idea, this is an opportunity for massive amounts of data to be harvested from people. Anytime you have a new platform, a new technology, a new system that allows for mass adoption of people, you have the opportunity to tap into a large amount of data. And, it's just about who owns that data. That's the big sort of ethical debate. And in Web 2, we know that it was all centralized. The governments came in. They created backdoors to the social media platforms that made it, or bought out social media companies that were, collecting data but weren't part of the system. They get bought out or whatever. And they have this one central system. Well, they can tell that it's not going to work forever, especially if economically it's not viable. And especially if the technology that's being built out there, the decentralized concept, continues to get adopted. And, again, even the word decentralization is it's kind of a buzzword in a sense. It's just how the system or the technology is set up. That doesn't necessarily mean freedom or anything like that. It is a little bit more open and transparent and everything else. But in essence, it doesn't really, it's just the way the data is stored. It's not so much, the other part is part of, Bitcoin and the decentralized network and all those things. There's a level of transparency of all the transactions. Everyone can audit the system. Well, that's going to come into play, I think, when it comes to governance and everything else. But there's that two-way street. It's like, okay, less corruption from governments, but now everyone's transactions can be or is recorded. You don't necessarily have to associate with a particular transaction unless you publicly make it known or something else, but it's just a different way to do internet. And I find it fascinating. I think we're going to need to keep track of it. And it comes at the heels of more and more destruction